We begin with two men we're learning are charged with capital murder tonight, accused of killing a 12-year-old girl and leaving her body in a creek.
Houston police sharing more details about the horrific scene they found here near the creek, where they found 12-year-old Jocelyn, her dead body in a creek. Now we know that two Hispanic men are being charged with capital murder. In a multi-division operation led by Houston police, 21-year-old Johan Jose Rangel Martinez and 26-year-old Franklin Jose Peña Ramos, both Venezuelan natives, are now charged with capital murder.
Charges have been filed. Now we want the justice system to do its job. If there was ever a circumstance where you do not give someone bail, this is it.
Investigators did not go into specifics on how the suspects and Jocelyn met or how Jocelyn died, only offering that those details are still being investigated, but they have submitted for a sexual assault kit to be completed.
Suspects seen meeting the victim and talking for a few minutes while they were on Kirkendall. Later, the suspects and the victim walked together to a convenience store. After a few minutes, all three together walked to a bridge where ultimately Jocelyn was murdered.
As for the immigration status of those two, we have reached out to Homeland Security to get confirmation if they're undocumented or not.
Ladies, there's an increasing problem that we need to talk about. Welcome to another installment of the Connecticut Gun Bench. Today's video is brought to you by P.A.N. Firearms, LLC. P.A.N. Firearms, the NRA certification of multifaceted gun training. You can reach us at 203-300-6343 or use our website at www.panfirearmsllc.com. As always, there'll be a link in the description box below. Any like channel, like content, and what I do, you can support me. The link, everything is appreciated. Connecticut residents, time has technically run out. If you plan on getting your Connecticut pistol permit, you're going to have to deal with the new training addendum that's being added on. As I said before, there are some real gray areas that aren't being covered and some real shenanigans going on. But as I get more information, I will keep you updated. If you have your permit, watch the expiration date. Don't let it expire. There's a link to the online renewal portal for the state of Connecticut for permits in the description box. Keep an eye on that. Let's talk about this. And an event over the weekend has inspired, shocked, I guess is the words I want to use, to make this video. Specifically to the women living in the U.S. Over the weekend, there was in Texas, 12-year-old girl was killed by two illegal immigrants. She was apparently lured to a bridge by them where they tied her up. Need I go any further what happened after that? But they murdered her and put her body in the bayou into the water. And she was discovered there. And this shocked me enough to realize that this is becoming a growing problem of young girls, underage girls, and women being assaulted by illegal immigrants. And she is not the only one, obviously, who has been murdered at the hands of an illegal immigrant. The first story I remember was Kay Steinley. She was shot by a man who had been deported 5 times. The man claimed he found the gun. Hey, I don't know that for sure, but they did trace the gun back to another person, and that person should be strung up by their nuts for losing that gun in the first place and not really reporting it. But it is a growing trend, and it's getting louder and louder, and more it is happening. And it just made me realize that I had, how many of these stories we're hearing, some of them which are being completely downplayed. A point to make is the murder of Laken Riley. If you remember, the illegal immigrant who killed her had been arrested in New York for assault on a 9-year-old girl. They basically let him go or put him out on the streets. He took off to Georgia and ended up killing her. And each one of these stories of each one of these ladies is just as tragic, but it seems to be a reoccurring problem. These stories are the ones that made it to the national limelight. There are a lot of these assaults. Remember, we just had a 13-year-old raped by an illegal immigrant who basically threatened her and a friend, if I'm not mistaken, with a machete, and videotaped the assault. It's happening more and more. It's happening more and more. Per capita, we're getting more and more of these essays and rapes happening on a regular basis at the hands of illegal immigrants, and it gets downplayed. Why? Because then the mainstream media is not going to play this up, because they would have to admit that there is a problem with migrant men who seem to think they can do any damn thing they want when they get here, up into and including murder. So it's interesting that, because if you remember, in one of his speeches, I think it was in April, Wisconsin, Trump said that Venezuela was emptying out his prisons and mental institutions and sending the people here. And of course, the very left-leaning political fact checkers, as they call themselves, jumped all over it, claiming there's no evidence of that. Well, there's no evidence that they're not doing it. That's what Castro did in Cuba back when we had that massive migration. He did it. Who's to say they're not doing it? Now, of course, these so-called fact checkers immediately jump in saying that there's no evidence to say that this is happening. But at the same time, they do admit that the crime is down in their country and that there is a mass migration problem that attributed to that drop. But then again, Venezuela also came out and said the deportation flights of Venezuelans trying to send them out of the U.S. back to Venezuela, they said we don't want them.
A potential setback for American officials at our southern border. Venezuela has stopped accepting deportation flights from the U.S. and Mexico after a deal between the nations fell apart. Those flights had been seen as a successful way to try to stem the flow of migrants from Venezuela.
So there you go. But ladies, don't buy the hype. You're not as strong as men. Stop. Start protecting yourselves. Now, I've done videos on where women are the largest growing, especially black women, are the largest growing number of gun owners in this country. I suggest that you exercise that right to its fullest. And I will have no problem whatsoever with you coming across a situation like this one and you having to discharge your duties with that firearm, and we just have one less scumbag in the world. I have no problem with that. But be real. Just because it hasn't happened to you or hasn't happened to someone you know does not undermine the fact that it could happen. You don't get to pick and choose when violence comes to your door. You don't have that luxury. I always say, train, arm yourself and learn how to use your firearm efficiently. For those of you who are lucky enough to live in a state that actually embraces the Constitution. For other states that don't, I suggest non-lethal forms of protection. Because it's interesting that the states where they don't actually allow you to carry a firearm or make it very hard to do so, they seem to have no problem with illegal immigrants running around shooting police officers, as what happened in New York, not once but twice.
Breaking news overnight, 2 NYPD officers shot in East Elmhurst, Queens.
Let's backtrack for a moment to the scene of what happened here. We're learning more about the suspect. Police say he is a 19-year-old Venezuelan migrant. The shooting happening at about 1:40 this morning near the intersection of 89th Street and 23rd Avenue. Those 2 uniformed officers were working to address a robbery pattern in the area involving mopeds and scooters. That's when they were met by that 19-year-old suspect.
They observed a male suspect driving a moped the wrong way on 82nd Street near 23rd Avenue and attempted to pull him over. The suspect then fled on foot, and the officers began a foot pursuit which led for several blocks. During the pursuit, the suspect fired multiple rounds at our officers, who then returned fire.
But this story of this young girl really just shocked me into realizing that there is a growing problem. And there's always somebody that says, yeah, but that happens anyway, and Americans do it too. Americans and other ethnicities do it too. Well, that's not the point. This is a problem that per capita is growing rapidly. And this is the only one. These are stories that we actually hear about. So ladies, protect yourselves. Situational awareness. You want to go for a hike? Go for a hike. But strap a 357 to your behind and learn how to use it. But that's my PSA for today. Let me know what you think. As always, you can leave your comments in the comment section below. And as always, any statements of violence or statements that lead to violence will be removed. Please like, share, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you're notified the next time a video goes live. I'm going to see you on the next one. Peace.